Thank you to all of you that are joining us today. So we have quite a full program, but as many of you would want to hear, the arrangements, the foundational arrangement and transitional arrangements from the funders. So John Lavis, I mentioned before, he's going to be able to join us only for the first half an hour. So we're going to start with John presenting. John is going to leave some time for Q&A. And if you will not completely finalize all the questions, we'll collate the questions and provide an information later on. And then after that, we're going to give some updates in terms of the partners, mainly documents and papers that are being circulated and upcoming publications, and leave some time for Q&A beforehand. But we wanted just to separate because John is not going to be able to attend the entire meeting. So over to you, John.
Great. Thank you very much, Carla. So these slides represent the messaging from the Funders Interest Group Executive. This first slide, I won't read through everything here. This is a slide that the FIG executive is using to communicate some background on ESIC. So when I look through most of the participants on the line, this will all be familiar to you about ESIC being a community of communities focused on using evidence synthesis, really exciting opportunities with AI-enabled living evidence syntheses. We want ESIC to be very agile and responding to windows of opportunity. The intent over time is to cover all sectors and regions, but in the coming 6 to 12 months, the focus will be provisionally on 11 sectors and on 2 regions. And recall that ESIC remains particularly committed to shifting power to the global south and locating equity at the heart of each step. Many communities involved in this, including the Funders Interest Group, 35 plus funders, but there are 6 that are part of the FIG executive that have been actively working over these past 2 months to make a number of decisions that will allow activities to move forward in the coming 6 to 12 months. As was announced at the UN General Assembly, 126 million has now been mobilized to support ESIC, and all of the key documents are available at evidencesic.org, and we'll post this slide deck that I'm going to run through in the coming 24 hours. If we move on to the next slide, you'll see the year 1 foundational investments. So if you think of all the solutions that were proposed through the ESIC planning process, think of these as where the funders have chosen to make their investments in the first 6 to 12 months. So they will continue returning to the long list of solutions, but I think 17 of the solutions are covered through these year 1 investments. Investment 1, the sectoral hubs, there's starting to be more clarity on what they will focus on using the language of the Global SDG Synthesis Coalition. 2 will focus on the planet pillar, 2 will focus on the peace pillar, 1 on the prosperity pillar, 4 on the people pillar, and then 2 cross-cutting. And again, some of the details here remain under active discussions. So you'll see sustainable development accelerators listed there, but that is conditional on the group leading that being comfortable with that designation. Then we have the regional hubs. The plan in year 1 is to support 1 in Africa, 1 in Latin America and the Caribbean, then the open data system, then the living inventory of AI-enabled digital evidence synthesis tools, and then finally the MEL infrastructure. So the funders, particularly the Wellcome Trust, will be gearing up a set of funding mechanisms that will allow these to come forward. So I won't be talking today about the timing of those calls. All of that is being actively worked on by Tarek Kokar and Isabel Fletcher at the Wellcome Trust. We go on to the next slide. One of the key things that the funders and many people get asked is what parts of ESIC will be open for business when. And regrettably, in a way, this is very difficult to predict because it is often hard for funders to anticipate all of the hurdles that they need to go through to have transparent mechanisms to get funding to the appropriate groups. This is our current best effort to articulate what might be available when, but you'll see a lot of pending in light gray because it's often pending confirmation by the funder, getting through a review panel process, and ultimately being approved through whatever that funder's organizational mechanism to do that is. But we hope that the coalition will have a mechanism in place to elicit questions from across the UN system starting in January or shortly after. Two sectoral hubs effectively exist now, but if you look down to June, the 4 ones funded by ESRC, we hope will come online in June. And then the 5 new Welcome funded sectoral hubs would come online in September. If we go back up, the hope is that 2 of the regional hubs would be able to start operation early in 2026. We'll start to see some of the open data system coming online in April, but again, there's a series of calls coming up that will talk about whether that is realistic. And then some of these other assets like the living inventory and the MEL infrastructure will come online later. One piece of this that isn't funded with the core ESIC funding, but would be funded through external additional funds is AI Commons, which was talked about at the UN General Assembly event on the 21st of September. We go on to, I think, what is the final main slide. What parts of ESIC's transitional arrangements will be operational by when? So there are 3 that were laid out in the slide deck that was made available on the 21st of September. The Funders Interest Group Executive has been active for the last 2 months. That's why there's now so much activity that can be talked about, and they will continue to be very engaged in pursuing a collective impact approach across funders. The Funders Interest Group Executive has approved 6 candidates for the steering group. They will be receiving invitations this week. The hope is they'll start meeting in late October, early November. The FIG executive looked very carefully at these potential candidates. There's now 1 from each region. There's balance in gender, career stage, across forms of evidence, and across interest holder categories. And these individuals have no plans to apply for funding for their organization, which allows them to take this bigger, more strategic look at what needs to happen when. The first wave of candidates for the Community Council will be receiving invitations either later this week or more likely next. And this council will start meeting in November. So the first wave of invitations will be focused on interest holder representatives and the few infrastructure leaders that can already be identified. They have funding from existing funding sources. Additional candidates will be invited as key infrastructure elements are funded through the foundational investments, and then their representatives identified. So some pieces are in place. On the 21st of September, these things were outlined, but a lot of progress has now been made in trying to actually put them in place. If we move on to the next slides, I'm not going to go through them in detail. We'll make this slide deck again available. For those of you who are following ESIC closely, you'll know that there was a slide deck released on the 21st of September laying out these proposed foundational investments, also laying out the transitional arrangements. If we go on to the next slide, I'll just quickly note that there is red font identifying where changes have been made since the 21st of September. So some additional thinking has been done about what the sectoral hubs, the initial wave of 11, would focus on. You'll see these in red, and again, some of them are provisional pending agreement by the involved individuals. If we move on to the next slide. Just a few changes to some of the capabilities here. So the last one, hoping that the sectoral hubs will also be able to address polycrisis and system change. something that Ian Goldman, very, very keen to see ESIC able to address. There will be a Metius Inception workshop. This is the name of the group funded by the Economic and Social Research Council in early November that will provide an opportunity to advance thinking about the sectoral hubs. If we move on to the next slide, again, you'll just see a few changes to some of the thinking about the regional collective impact hubs. So now calling what we had originally called the hub focused on Middle East and North Africa, it's now called Arab states. That would be a year two focus. Also, some thinking has been put in about starting a European and UK sub-regional hub in the broader Europe and Central Asia region. You'll also see a couple of tweaks to some of the areas of focus for the regional hubs. So again, I won't go through them in detail. If you're interested in these, you can look at the slides as soon as they're posted. If we move on to the open data system, and I see a number of people on the line who will have received an invitation from Tarek Kokar at the Wellcome Trust over the last 48 hours. This is laying out the many interest holders in an open data system, and the Funders Interest Group executive has worked really hard to identify representatives of all of these interest holders and has extended an invitation to join a series of 3 upcoming calls. If we move on to the next slide, you'll see the focus of these upcoming calls. Working through questions related to how can we move from research projects led by a few to a co-owned distributed open data system that people trust? How can we fund Global South contributors in a way that gives them a path to leadership or co-leadership? And how can we set the stage for sharing and reusing the future flow of human-in-the-loop process synthesis data? So some very exciting conversations coming up, one in late October, one in early November, and the final one in late November that then will set the stage for next steps on the open data system. If we move to the next slide, where we'll talk about the living inventory. I don't think major changes here, just noting that there will also, pending additional funding, be this AI Commons initiative done in partnership with UN partnerships. And you'll see that noted at the bottom. You'll also see the last bullet point that the FIG executive has now approved a set of principles for and proposed types of engagement with tech companies, and that will be posted at some point for everybody to look and to comment on, look at and comment on. If we move on to investment 5, again, just a few tweaks to the version posted on the 21st of September. This one has to do with the MEL infrastructure. A number of us had hoped that the funders would be able to, if you look at this, the bullet at the bottom, reduce the level of grantee burden with the unified monitoring system. That is unfortunately not looking like it's possible, but they will require participation of their grantees in the light touch ESIC MEL system, which is very good news. There may be one final, there are a few final slides about the transitional arrangements, but I've covered the major points here. This slide is just to say that the hope is that some of the groups that are not yet organized into a peak body firing on all cylinders will take advantage of this period to be thinking about what that would look like. On to the next slide, which I believe is the transitional arrangements. So just keep going on. So we now have terms of reference for each of these 3 groups. Those terms of reference will be posted. The only major change to what was posted on the 21st of September is on the previous slide. The Funders Interest Group was quite cautious about the use of governance, wanted to be clear that the individual funders still had to report to their respective governing boards and align to their organization's strategy. So the wording for the steering group has been adjusted typically to talk about advice to support governance rather than governance per se. So that has come out of the FIG executive discussions. So I think that's it. If we can just scroll forward to reassure me that I've covered everything. So the main message messages are in those first few slides. Everything else was just incremental changes to the slides that were posted on the 21st of September, based in significant part on funder interest group executive discussions, but also on feedback that has come in to ESIC. So I'll open it up to see if people have any
Thank you very
questions
much,
or
Bruce.
comments.
I'm gonna ask you to continue sharing because when I'm sharing, I can't see anything, and it's hard to relate. So we're
No
gonna
problem.
open for questions. We have John here for the first 12 minutes, and for those that joined later, if your question is, if there is no time to answer all the questions, or if a question we are not going to be able to answer today, we're gonna collect the questions. So if you could use the chat to pose your questions, and we'll then be looking at responding to all of you. Or if anyone wants to speak, we will unmute you as well. Arn.
Hi, thank you very much. I think it's a little easier just to ask a question than putting it in the chat. I'm just wondering about the relationship between ESIC to existing knowledge synthesis processes and organizations, thinking here specifically of science policy interfaces. In a lot of these areas that you have highlighted, running these types of syntheses, of course, there's already active work underway, or we are currently building in some areas, for example, AMR, an independent panel on antimicrobial resistance and how to mitigate it. So I'm wondering to what extent you're planning to integrate this work with other existing initiatives in that space so that we avoid duplication. And secondly, of course, an important aspect is usually the translation of knowledge and through policy implementation support tools. To what extent, there's it takes 17 years on average to translate evidence into policy practice. And so, developing the evidence is one part of the coin. The second part is the practice part. How do you connect to that? Is there also a plan maybe to focus on policy implementation tools to cooperate with partners and so forth? Thank you very much.
Great. So in answer to the first question, I think the aspiration is that the sectoral hubs will provide an organizing opportunity for existing groups. So the intention is not to relegate them to the sidelines, but to say, can we bring you in and talk about where alignments may be helpful? So to your point, really actively looking for synergies, really looking for opportunities to reduce duplication. So with AMR as a very concrete example, the hope is that would align with one of these sectoral hubs, and then conversations could begin about whether ESIC is doing things that would allow the AMR synthesis community to move farther faster. Are there things you're doing that could be brought into other domains that are being covered by ESIC? And then for your second question, the regional hubs are meant to be a coordinating mechanism for the very types of evidence intermediaries that you've been alluding to, and all of the types of tools that you would use, we would hope would be the focus of active discussion among those evidence intermediaries. So that second foundational investment is very much focused on evidence to policy, evidence to practice, evidence use by everyday people. So that activity, we hope, will be organized by the regional groups. And then I feel like, Arne, you had a final point that you made. You had two big ones, but you ended on a really important additional point. Does that ring a bell?
No, doesn't.
No? Okay. All right. Okay.
Sorry.
That's
Sorry,
great,
there was
because there's
something else.
quite a
Yeah.
few people, quite a few questions.
Okay.
So one
Yeah.
question is, where can I find a list of the 35 plus funders involved at the moment?
It's a good question. I don't think the Funders Interest Group has made it publicly available. So I will make a note to ask them whether they consider that to be shareable. Up until now, virtually everything, once it's approved, gets posted. But I'll specifically ask about that as well.
Thank you, John. There's a second question. You mentioned several initiatives will launch soon. For example, the open data infrastructure. Does that mean that the funding call will come out soon, or that the solution has already been funded and will come out with some early form?
It's very much the latter. So there's an extraordinary amount of really innovative work already happening through projects like Destiny and others. And so what we're talking about here is working with James Thomas, people like Jan Minks, Julian Elliott, others. They have existing funding that is rapidly developing in a way that it could be then extended to other sectors. But in these open data system calls that have been booked for this coming 6 weeks, we'll have an opportunity to hear from them and others about where are they now and where will they be by when. Then separately, having gone through that process, there will then, we hope, be a focus on, well, what would additional money then help us do? Ideally, a lot, if not all of that additional money would go to leaders in the global south and allow them then to make active contributions and to complement what's being done with the existing investments.
Thank you, John. There's a third question in respect of the development of sector hubs. How are the organizations currently active in these sectors being involved and or consultants on the process?
Well, I think that's where the funders interest group executive, struggles to do things in a way that is as transparent as can be, but doesn't advantage particular groups. So the hope is when the call comes out that the groups that are actively working in those spaces would mobilize quickly to respond. And the domains were initially set out on the 21st of September, which sent a strong signal about where there could be mobilization to be ready for those calls. Now there's some updated thinking. If the thinking changes again about what the focus of those sectoral hubs, that would be posted. So, and through all of this process, the funder interest group executive has tried to share the message that they're open for feedback, but there isn't an active plan to talk with groups in each sector, but to instead, through the open call, to provide an open, transparent mechanism for groups to self-organize and then to respond. But the hope is by giving an early signal about the domains that the sectors would be expected to cover, people can start that self-organizing now.
Thanks, John. There is a question here, and acknowledge that was a great talk, thank you. But a question about the elements of the planet pillar. So you've focused on climate solution and environment protection. The question is whether you intend to narrow the focus around protection specifically, excluding wider environment management concerns, or do you still see a space for environment management issues?
So great question, and it's a placeholder. I think that language comes from the, I always forget, COFOG, the Classification of Functions of Government. From any interaction I've had with the Funders Interest Group executive, they are very open to groups saying in the response to the call, or sooner, you're welcome to provide the feedback sooner by email to info@evidensic.org. That you think the framing should be X. I think with each of the sectoral hubs, there will need to be discussions about scope as well as overlap with other groups. Through the coalition, I know Shiv, who's on the line, we've seen a lot of conversation across the UN system about, for example, within the peace pillar, what would go in one grouping, what would go in the other. So for now, there's signals of a intent to do something in a space, but groups who know the area well can give feedback sooner than later about what would be a more helpful framing, but also through the call, they can articulate what would be the optimal framing. So the short answer is there's flexibility to frame it as is deemed appropriate.
Thanks, John. I know you're going to have to go. Just a reminder that we are going to share these slides. I think, John, it's going to be posted on the evidence ESIC.org
website. Yep.
Website. We're going to put the website on the chat if anyone can put their website on the chat because it's a new website. And over there, you also find an email address that you can actually, what John said, you can raise any questions that you want. So please just say thank you to John, and especially thanks for his hard work. I don't know when John sleeps because it's been very intense. Grateful to see the progress that we've made so far. And we're still going to be committed to do webinars until the end of the year. So we'll come back with the progress for that. And John, if you're not seeing, there's quite a lot of congratulations to you, particularly in the thing. So thank you, John. We're going to the second part, and Bruce, I would appreciate if you can put it on a slideshow, because at the moment it's not. Now it's the opposite direction, Bruce. It's showing it's not showing it's showing the other side, the presentation side. If you could move.
Okay, sorry. Let me.
So while Bruce is figuring out the slides, I think it's display settings, Bruce. So you need to just move it to the other. Just to say, we have a number of colleagues here that were part of the Secretariat. We have been committed. We committed with the Wellcome Trust until the end of the year to support this transition. And you're going to hear from many of us now what each one of our organizations are doing to fulfill this commitment. These are all very preliminary, and I'm going to ask my colleagues to speak for their own organization. Ruth, do you need me to share?
I might have to, Carla. I might have to get you to share.
Okay. I will share. Just a reminder to all of you that when I'm sharing, I'm not seeing anyone. So if you have any questions, you have to hold your question a little bit. So what we're talking now is, most of us have been working intensively behind the scenes to look at our organization, see what we can do for this collective impact. So we're going to have a description. I believe that I've seen Carrie and Shiv, I've seen Will. I don't know if Zoe is on the call, but if she's not, I will present the information on her behalf. And then we're going to update you on documents and publications. So, and we'll leave space for some question. I think the most important thing you've seen, there is a lot of things done, and this came from the Cape Town consensus. Act now, start small, and think big. And one of the things that we all have been committed since Cape Town was to look at our own environment and see how we actually can do our part for this. And each one of us can play this role. So in terms of Cochrane, we've published an editorial on behalf of the Secretariat that was published for the meeting at the UN. We also, because we're having a leadership meeting with 200 members of the Cochrane collaboration in Lisbon in the end of October, we used part of the meeting to strategically thinking how Cochrane as a community can support collective impact and ESIC, and what's the role that we can play. And when I say that, I'm not saying Cochrane Central, I'm saying Cochrane as a community, because a lot of us, we have groups in over 100 countries, and most of the groups are participating, a lot of people are participating on this process with us. And the other thing that we've made the decision was to launch, we have a series of thematic groups based on our scientific strategy, and we are now launching a thematic group. There is a call for asking people to participate on a thematic group on infectious disease. We have always been very active on areas of infectious disease, but last year our infectious disease group that was based in the UK and closed down. So we think that that's a very good opportunity for us to rethink and we're very encouraging our groups in the Global South to take leadership of this proposal. So I'm sure that Ruth or one of my colleagues can put the link to the application process in the chat if you have any interest. I'm not sure if
I'm
Zoe.
here.
Oh, Zoe, that's very late for you. Thank you for being here.
It is.
So I'll pass it on to you.
Thank you. It is late, but I didn't want to miss it. So like Cochrane, JBI has our global network meeting later this year. We're meeting in November, and we're also doing a special session on ESIC. We think it's really important to recognise where all of our organisations are already doing work that is ESIC aligned. And so JBI is doing some mapping to look at how our activity and projects are already potentially contributing in some way to ESIC solutions. And of course, we will continue our advocacy role supporting global engagement, collaboration and coordination to achieve the goals of ESIC. And I think Will's going to speak to the other things that we're jointly involved in. I think that JBI and Cochrane and Campbell will continue to do some really good, interesting work together on ESIC. Thanks, Carla.
Thanks, Zoe. Will.
Thanks, Carla. Thanks, Zoe. And just to emphasize, the three of our organizations committed to saying what we're doing. We're well aware that lots of people are doing lots of things, and this is very much not meant to be an exhaustive or even representative list of all of that effort. But picking up what Zoe said, I'll start at the bottom. Actually, we have this joint AI methods group where Campbell, Collaboration for Environmental Evidence, Cochrane, JBI are all working together with others. No arguments about whose name goes first, no stupid arguments about where the logo sits, just us all working together to move the AI methods together forward, which I'm really, really pleased about. But a big thing I want to take advantage of having you all here for is we need a board that truly reflects our role as a global organization. And make sure that decisions are being made by a genuinely global group of people. We are therefore recruiting board members for the Campbell collaboration. So if that's something you know someone who might be great at, or you might be great at yourself, then please either give them a nudge or give yourself a nudge and drop me an email. Expressions of interest are super easy. You can just send me an email saying I'm interested in this, and we will take it from there. We will get to a point where we ask for CVs and applications and stuff, but you don't need to do that now. So if you know someone great, don't hesitate to encourage them to get in touch. Similarly, if we're going to be a global organization, we need a global team. I'm really happy to say that Campbell will start to recruit. We've been very much waiting until ESIC has matured to work out where we fit within this big collective impact effort, but we will start to recruit some new staff members this year, and we are open to people all around the world as part of that. So very much looking for applications and encouragements. Please keep your eye out for that. We will also be expanding our network of national and regional centres. Then in terms of what we're actually delivering on collective impact, the Metius project that John Lavis mentioned is the ESRC first grant in this area, which is funding what we hope will become 4 of the sectoral hubs. Campbell co-led group to apply to that. Essentially every university in the UK applied for this, and most of them rang up people they'd never met and said, can you be our international partners? And it was very, very icky. This is a genuine collaboration of lots of international partners who have long histories of working together, coming together. We also maxed out, there's a limit on how much of the ESRC's funding can go internationally. We maxed that out, so it's as international a project as we could within the ESRC's rules, and we're very pleased about that. I think Lawrence at least is on the line today, who is one of the co-leads of the Metius project from PACE, who I'm just going to assume you all know Lawrence from PACE. Joint AI Methods Group, how do we do policy scale evidence synthesis? Phrase gets used a lot. Nobody really knows what it means, let alone how to do it. Lots to learn, lots to figure out. We're going to be part of convening conversations around that and figuring that out together. And I'm really pleased to say that we're going to be moving to a new journal publisher that will let us maintain an open access journal, free to read and free to publish, which I think is really important to have in the social sciences. So yeah, thanks all for being here, for what we're all doing, and this is just a little snapshot of what one of our community of communities is doing.
Thanks, Will. I'm going to move on to the Global SDG Synthesis Coalition. I know that Carrie and Shiv are in the call. I don't know who is going to speak.
It'll be me, Carla.
Go on, Shiv.
Okay, so the Global SDG Synthesis Coalition has been busy, and things are going to get busier in line with what's been happening with everyone in ESIC. So a major thing is that we supported the UN General Assembly event on the 21st of September on accelerating progress, achieving the SDGs with AI and evidence. So a lot of big wigs were there, including Microsoft and OpenAI, in addition to representation. Kerry represented the coalition. John represented ESIC. The CEO Wellcome Trust were there. It was a good event, very unusual, actually, for the UN to hold this event. It was done in a kind of a pop-up room with sofas and rugs and carpets, very un-UN-like. But you can still see the video recording of that event. I'll post the link in the chat after I've finished updating you. And we actually have some money now to have a proper formal secretariat. We've been operating ad hoc up until now, including within this ESIC process. So that's going to be a major sort of plus for the coalition in terms of kicking on with activities under the ESIC umbrella. We've already started talking to some of the things mentioned before, the sectoral hubs mentioned before. So as Will mentioned with Metius, and I think Destiny was mentioned as another sectoral hub. So the coalition is already thinking about collaborating and making plans to collaborate with these sectoral hubs through our pillar management group structure. We're also trying to get our act together as part of the multilateral kind of evaluation system in terms of contributing to this open data sharing infrastructure that John referred to, and trying to facilitate a process where we're aligning all the individual evaluation repositories. So we have a series of discussions and meetings with different networks like the Evaluation Cooperation Group, which gathers the multilateral development banks, and OECD DAC, to see if we can progress on that. And we have a planned virtual session at the UN World Social Summit, which is focused around social development. So essentially the event there will be about how ESIC can contribute to evidence-informed decision-making on social development. And we'll be highlighting one of the coalition synthesis on social assistance as a kind of an example of what can be possible. So looking forward, we're going to begin recruitment of 2 proper secretariat posts, one based around demand-side engagement within the multilateral system and another one on operations. We're looking to implement a kind of dynamic prioritization process. So this reflects what John said about question elicitation. We're continuing work on demand-side engagement, and one of the things that will come out as an initial product will be on this kind of playbook on how different entities can engage with different parts of the multilateral system. And one of our objectives is to really sort of hardwire ourselves into the national evaluation capacity development efforts of different UN agencies who are working with national partners to really get synthesis into the next slide, please. Just wanted to mention what's happening at the individual pillar level within the coalition. So a number of things that are going to be coming out soon to look out for. Under the peace pillar, we have a synthesis on what works to reduce homicides and conflict-related deaths. So that will be out very, very soon. Under the people pillar, we're progressing on a synthesis on social assistance for reaching the furthest behind. The interim report and gap map was just published yesterday. And the full report will be out later this year. And under the planet pillar, we had a meeting very recently with the Destiny Consortium, so another one of these sectoral hubs, and the the pillar is actively sort of collaborating with Destiny now, likely to be focused around the subject of nature-based solutions. I'll leave it there. Thank you. Back to you, Carla.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to ask Lawrence and Laura if they are around and if they want to add something. I cannot really see who is around, so.
All good from my side, Carla. Thanks so
Hey,
much for those fantastic presentations. I think all covered. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Laura, are you around? Okay, so just to briefly say, because I want to leave time for questions, that we have now, as we discussed before, we have a commitment to maintain the website until end of the year, and the website now contains all final documents in many languages. So, you know, I'm going to ask again because it's a bit confusing when we transition to another website. So when I talk about the website, is the oldest one. And if Bruce, if you could put it on the chat. So you have there access to the roadmap in many languages. You have the Cape Town Consensus Charter, the citizen call to action, the working group and planning group final summary reports, and the stage 2 reports. So if you have, you know, there's a lot of documents and you are welcome to look at the site and read it in your own language. You see, I missed the QR code. So these are the QR code that you can get in your own language. These are the translations of all these documents. And again, we'll share the slides later on. In addition to that, there is a series of papers being organized. One that is organized by PACE and ARCRES about equity, and with involvement of many of the people that were part of the ESIC process. A second one on the theory of change. And there are some, you know, there is a paper on the, you know, we've really focused doing ESIC to get a group together of early and mid-career. And this group, thanks to the donation of 2 of the ESIC chairs that wants to remain anonymous, they donated their own stipend. We were able to organize a leadership program for this early and mid-career, and they put together a beautiful report that is also available. And last but not least, there is a series of papers being prepared by the working groups with support from Zoe. Zoe's been very active on that, that will aim to be submitted to the Journal of Clinical Epidemiology, including a paper on methods that have been led by Zoe herself, and papers on outputs that is being led by the co-chairs of the different working groups, and another one that includes perspectives from citizens. So to finalize, before we open for questions, we will have another newsletter in November that is being organized and will be updating with all the news until there. Then we'll have a final webinar that is currently set for 17 and 18. The current website will, as I mentioned before, will be updated until December. And you also have the ESIC YouTube channel for all the videos. And here is the QR code for the website and the YouTube if you'd like to look at them. And remember that they have the video, but also I assume they have the photos. So I think that's it. I'm going now to stop sharing and open for questions. We have most of the people. Maureen, I've seen that you are in the call as well. Is there anything that I forgot to say about the update from the citizen side?
Oh, Carla, this was a great and very encouraging presentation. Really happy to see all the citizen engagement in ESIC. We did have a follow-up workshop last month, I guess, where several citizens attended. We couldn't make all of these announcements that you've made today, but our little group from Cape Town is still active on WhatsApp. So we've been providing information to each other that way. And we are absolutely looking forward to collaborating with everyone in this ecosystem and as key interest holders, and just looking forward to the future. To me, this is a huge moment for citizen engagement in evidence synthesis, and it's very exciting. So, and I think your presentation today was very clear and really answered a lot of questions that I had, and hopefully that other citizens have, and that I can also pass along to anyone who asked me some questions. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Maureen. I'm looking at the chat, but I don't see any specific questions. There is a lot of links. So if you want to have to raise your hand, if you have any specific question. Again, details about the funder group, we might not be able to answer, but we can get the questions together and then provide an answer later on. From all of my colleagues, is there anything else that we missed that you want to add? No? All right, so I don't see any question. And I want to thank you all and thanks everyone for your patience. It has been so intense that it's really very hard to keep up with everything that happened on the past 2 months. But in my view, I think these are great opportunities for us to really collaborate. And I think I'd like just to finalize by remind us that we all have a part to play on that. So we all communicate with others. We don't need also everything to wait for the funders to encourage us to do. There is a few things that we can do, and many of us have already relationships and are working together. I know that in Cochrane we're very open to collaborate with others, and I'm sure that this is the truth for all of my colleagues that presented today. And while I'm speaking here, trying to make a final speech, there is a question for you, Will. Could you elaborate on the specific perspective of or experience you hope new members from these regions will bring to the Campbell collaboration strategic direction?
Yes and no. So I report to the board of the Campbell collaboration, and it's for the board to recruit its own members. So it's really important that I don't kind of say who should be on the board because they collectively are my boss. So I'm going to be careful about that. The advert is up there. It's signed off by the board. You can read it for yourself, and it's for you and them to interpret. That said, if you read the ESIC roadmap, which we are all signed up to, we are collectively committed to a strategic shift of power to the global south. Campbell has been an organization that intends to serve the whole world since it began in like 25 years ago or something. But it hasn't been an organization by people led from all over the whole world. It hasn't created opportunities equally for people all over the whole world, and that needs to change. And it needs to start to change from the top. So that's why the board has opened a round of recruitment to refresh the board and to make sure we have a truly global board. And I think the ESIC roadmap does a very good job of explaining is maybe the wrong word, but talking about why that is important and how big the benefits are for organizations that want to ultimately do work that benefits billions of people all over the world. You can't have the narrowness of focus that comes from being dominated by any one region. So I hope that answers the question a bit. I should probably say we are not just looking for a board full of researchers. There's a very wide range of people who are part of this community of communities. And the leadership that we're talking about, the global leadership, and I'm sure this is true of all the organizations who are on this call, let alone the ones who have spoken, requires bringing together people who use evidence, people who get evidence to people who use evidence, as well as people who produce evidence. We want a board that reflects that variety of experiences. And also, if any of you are secretly billionaires or have friends who are billionaires, you're very welcome to let me know about that as well. Hope that answered the question.
Thank you very much, Will. That's your last chance to add any other question or raise your hands. Okay, if not, remember this webinar is going to be recorded and we're going to also share the slides. And so you have other opportunities to connect with us. I personally am very looking forward to our leadership meeting to challenge ourselves and see how we can collaborate with others. And I think that those are the things that make us all excited with the moment we're living. Not easy times, but lots of good things as well. Thank you, and have a nice day where you are. And we will continue in touch, as I said, from the newsletter and the webinars. Bye-bye.